For quite a number of years, in fact, the Australian National Retailers Association has conducted a survey on Christmas giving to charities. The association represents some of the biggest names in retail in this country and the survey's out today. Chief Executive Margy Osmond joins us now from our Sydney CBD studio. Margy, great to have you on board for Social Business. Just give us a sense in terms of the overall findings of the survey. Are we still being as generous as we have been in the past?
Well, look, I think we're as generous as we were last year. And I think this will be a slightly better Christmas than last year from a consumer spending point of view. So legitimately, you might have hoped to have seen a bit of an uptick in charitable giving as well. That's not really what we're seeing. It's about status quo with last year, and it continues to show us that people would rather give money or food or goods as opposed to their time at this particular period of the year.
So, Margy, are women more generous than men, or are young people more generous than old people? How does it? What's the trends there?
Well, I was interested in your comments earlier about the differences between men and women. Of those who are going to give this year of our sample, it's about 59–60% of people say they're going to give some kind of donation this Christmas. And there are just a touch more women prepared to donate than there are men. So I think it's something like, of the sample that are going to make a donation, 60% of women said they would and 56% of men. I think perhaps if there is a disparity, it may simply be that this is the time of year when probably the lady of the household, not that I wish to be sexist, is in charge of purchasing and dispersing the funds and what goes under the Christmas tree and what might, for example, go to a charity or buy a goat for a worthy village through one of the, the international charities.
It is interesting, Margy, because a lot of the surveys now on philanthropy showing that women are actually becoming much more significant in being the decision makers there. Now, tell me, do people both give and volunteer for Christmas, or is there a preference?
Well, look, there seems to be a very marked preference for actually giving money or giving goods as opposed to time at Christmas, which is a bit at odds with the sort of normal volunteering profile of Australians, who are usually keen to put their hand up for just about any good cause in that space, and so many corporates who are very engaged in getting their workers out on volunteering programs. There's a very small percentage of people said that they would be giving their time. Now, I think that may once again be a reflection of the nature of the time of year and the festivities and the sheer volume of tasks and family commitments that people have around that period. But equally, it must make it quite difficult for charities at this time of year.
And obviously, if we go to shopping malls now, and I've noticed even here at Foxtel, you have the Christmas tree, the giving boxes below it. Do people still like giving in that way?
Yes, and look, I think it's a growing trend. One of the things that we're finding is it's part of that expectation of service. As you pointed out, increasingly now people are wanting to align themselves with brands that are aligned or working with a charity or being seen to have some sort of community contribution. In addition to that, it becomes almost a one-stop shop thing. They don't have to think about it or go to any extra trouble to make a donation. They're out there doing their festive shopping anyway, and the stores make it as easy as possible, as do a number of online retail organisations. And in a strange kind of way, I think it's a wonderfully symbiotic relationship, because people are out there, they're in a spending mood, and I think potentially it's a very good generator of income at this time of the year to pair the retailers with charities.
Margy, if you're finding that the consumers are a bit more socially or environmentally conscious, what can retailers do not just to support that, but what are retailers doing to kind of promote that further? You said it's a symbiotic relationship, but how are retailers kind of, pushing that in a really positive direction?
Well, look, I think if you take it out of just the Christmas sphere, where there are a range of very particular things, most of the large retailers now have ongoing and relationships with a number of charities or community groups of very long standing. I mean, if you were to just look at Coles and Woolworths, for example, in the last 3 years combined, they've given an excess of $60 million to a whole range of community causes. So for them, it's very much embedded in what they do. And it's not always just simply about the obvious charities too. You'll find situations where, and it's another Coles example, during the Queensland floods, they formed a very strong relationship with the national parks and wildlife organisations in Queensland so that they could go and feed native cassowaries who had been cut off from their normal food supplies. So they fed them with whatever was coming from the stores that might have been past its use-by date. So there's a whole range of, from the very small and perhaps ones you wouldn't hear about every day, through to things like the schools programs and major charitable relationships.
Margy, it's very clear that more and more of the leading retailers do have that sense of corporate or environmental responsibility. Let me go to the other side. Do you actually believe that more people are becoming ethical consumers?
Yes, I do. I genuinely do believe that that's part of the mix here. Because, you know, retailers, despite what you might think about whether or not they're online and a whole range of issues at the moment about responsiveness, they are the ultimate in responsiveness when it comes to consumers. I mean, if they don't respond to what consumers want, they don't have a business. And clearly this is something that consumers are asking for. If you look at companies like Bunnings, for whom now all of these kinds of social responsibility issues are very much embedded in their business model. These are not bolt-ons, if you like. There's nothing cynical about this process. This is part of how their businesses are now structured.